All right, let's get the news and notes out of the way first. So, like, the rumor is that Burrow is going to miss on Monday night, and that's that's in line with the moves that the Bengals are making. They signed Reed Sinnett, who I don't really know anything about, to the practice squad as long as AJ McCarron, the dude from Alabama. These are all in line with the potential for even Burrow to go on IR, and you kind of read the tea leaves that, like, they're making roster moves, they're going to do something. So if I was a Burrow owner, I either want to have Matt Stafford on my roster, or I want to go ahead and have Jake Browning ahead of time because it's a Monday night game and I can pivot before rosters lock. Let me pull this up. The other roster move that's going on right now is Eckler is going to miss this week, and the internet rumors are that he's going to miss until after week 6 because the Chargers have an early bye week. We're going to talk about bye weeks here in a second. And you'd be surprised how often, like, Reddit and Twitter is right about stuff, because they only have to have like a batting average of like 30% for it to matter, because it really doesn't cause any risk to just listen to a rumor. The other day I held CEH for a couple hours waiting on Isaiah Pacheco, so it doesn't matter. The rumors of my uncle's brother's friend, they matter a little bit in fantasy because of the fact that, like, being ahead of the news is going to be beneficial instead of waiting for it to break on anything else. So I do try to tend to put my ear to the train tracks. Let's see. The Ravens elevated Kenyon Drake and Melvin Gordon. So that kind of might tell me what I think that the Ravens think of Justice Hill long term, or Gus Bus in the passing game. Robbie Anderson was elevated, and I'm not going to call him chosen because it's stupid. Robbie Anderson was elevated for the Dolphins because Waddle's out. Patrick Taylor was elevated for the Pack, so that gives me a pretty good indication of what they're thinking about Aaron Jones. And Jamal Williams for the Saints was IR'd. So again, more news towards Kendre Miller potentially having value for the next few weeks, even with Kamara coming back. And then as I move back over to Joe Burrow, because I like this picture better, Nick Chubb only tore his MCL, which is kind of amazing. So he may not have had his last carry in the NFL. All right, so I'm going to put the handcuff versus stashing other people's running backs argument to rest, and it has to do with, like, the risk that I incur by carrying my own insurance policy versus not carrying my own insurance policy. When the damage is done, I disproportionately hurt myself by not carrying my own insurance policy, and I help my opponents out by not carrying my own insurance policy by allowing them to carry my insurance policy, right? So that's the whole argument. I want to carry my league mates handcuffs, which I agree with, because at a certain point, the only guys that are going to have value on the wire are those guys with massive upside. And we're going to talk about guys like Tank Dell and Jason Reed here in a second to help clarify this. But yes, I do want to carry my opponent's handcuffs if they're on the wire and there's nothing else on there, and how I'm going to benefit myself and how I'm going to hurt them by doing so. But by me hurting myself and putting myself down a player, putting a void in my lineup by not having my own handcuff, and also at the same time helping my opponent to potentially have that guy. That's the whole reason why the argument is, well, I get to help myself more by now having 2 RB1s. Yeah, but that's because my opponent was not smart enough to actually roster his handcuff. So it works hand in hand. Like, he hurt himself, and you then took advantage of it ahead of time by, like, not rostering Jake Browning or Matt Stafford, knowing that the Joe Burrow news was coming out all week, and allowing your opponent to go pick up Matt Stafford if he was still available on your wire, and then hold him. So now the only other option, if you want to play Burrow, is to take Jake Browning. So these things they're not operating outside of a vacuum. There's another opponent that you have to take into account with this. So I bring this up because, like, even if you were the Jalen Hurts quarterback or owner of Jalen Hurts last year, when Justin Fields started going off, if you just said, hey, I already have a quarterback, I don't need Justin Fields, you're actually helping somebody else out by allowing them to pick up Justin Fields and riding that 5-game stretch, right? So like we have to sabotage our opponents as much as we have to look out for trying to win games for ourselves. They go together. That's how winning occurs. Using I words, if I can remember. And there's something called endowment fallacy, which is essentially just the fancy way of saying human psychology, that we value the things that we have more than the things that are out there. And, that's why it's so hard to dump guys off our bench, and removing that emotional attachment to, potential capital towards the idea of how am I benefiting myself and how am I sabotaging my points, and doing that from more of an objective standpoint. That's important. Like, if you're in a 10-man league, and the reason why I use 10-man league all the time is because it allows me to do the math really fast in my head as I talk. If you're in a traditional 10-man league where, 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 1 flex, 1 tight end, 1 quarterback, whatever, like the top 25 running backs and top 25 wide receivers are going to be in everybody's lineup. There probably aren't going to be a lot of 2 tight end comps. And then once you get beyond that, like the diminishing returns of what like wide receiver and running back like 26 and below are, they become less and less valuable to roster because of how what the potential is for you to win. So like once you get past your like first or second replacement guy on your bench, the rest of that has a disproportionate value. If you're just like, if you have a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 at that point, it has to be, the value of that player has to be towards you not seeing them in somebody else's lineup, because the chances of that guy ever being able to work his way into your lineup outside of a potential stash towards, value in the future. And I use the idea of like kinetic energy versus potential energy. If the guy is not going to help someone else win, and he's not going to help you win immediately, he has to have long-term value, i.e. stashing someone else's handcuff. Otherwise, like, why is that guy on your roster? Like, what is he doing? And, if that means I'm holding quarterback 6 and I have quarterback 3 at the same time, then so be it, because someone else is not gaining an advantage from having that guy in their lineup. And the other thing you have to remember, or I try and remember, is I don't want to see certain people make the playoffs or be in better positions in the playoffs by having more points. I would like to keep their points down, especially in my league, one of my leagues, where there's a payout for having most regular season points. So choking other people is a good idea from a strategy standpoint, right? And I've talked about that before. So furthering this, there's more news coming out, noise I should say, about Devin A-Chain. I just like more and more don't see how he tells the story of being a league winner, but there's noise coming out about him. So like, I have to weigh the possibility of him being able to be a league winner and benefit someone else versus it just being noise, right? And how he's going to get there. He may have value next week as a 1-week rental because of the Jeff Wilson thing. If Mostert goes down like that, there's a possibility of that. But the other thing is, and I have this bring up, this is kind of what made me think about this, is the NFL's bye weeks are coming out. Week 5, there's bye weeks, and the Browns, the Chargers, the Seahawks, and the Buccaneers. So there's going to be a lot of people who have pieces of these offenses in their lineups. And so in some regards for these players or these owners that have these offenses in their lineup, week 3 becomes the last week that they're stashing. Because week 4, they're stashing for a different purpose. They're stashing for these pieces missing time. I have to have a guy to put into the lineup. I have to plan ahead a week. I shouldn't be picking up guys for week 5, knowing that week 5 has bye for these players. So I should be scanning ahead, knowing who I'm going to pick up a week early, because the other thing is my opponent should be doing that too, right? So that could even potentially mean that I am scanning 2 weeks ahead, knowing that my opponent is like, the idea of I know that you know that you know that I know, right? That stuff that's going on. So when we bring up guys and I'm going to see if I can pull this up for everybody to see. Um, I have the quarterbacks pulled up, and Daniel Jones and Brock Purdy aside, because they've already played. These are the scoring leaders for the NFL. Mac Jones may not be sustainable. He has 96 pass attempts through two games, but Matt Stafford might be sustainable at 93. And then CJ Stroud, and this is the interesting thing about CJ Stroud at 91 attempts, like that offense may function differently than we thought, even if it's like the good old garbage time. And garbage time is not something to go chase because that is not predictable to the extent of, is your guy going to get points at the end of the game versus the different potential outcomes that a game can run through in order to get to its final state. Right. So I want the potential for that neutral game script, the idea of neutral game script where they have the possibility of passing all game long and scoring points instead of them having not scored points. And then maybe they can get a few tacked in at the end. That's just, to me, that's counterintuitive to cross your fingers and hope that the cookie crumbles that way instead of it being predictable ahead of time. But, through two games, CJ Stroud has thrown a lot of passes. So that means we can start to look at the number 2 and number 3 in that offense having value. And then we see good old Kirk Cousins there at 88. And then, Kenny Pickett at 76. But as you can see, the drop off between Mac Jones, Matt Stafford, and Kenny Pickett at 76, there's a huge drop, and those targets have to go someplace in those offenses. So now we can start to look at, so I try and pull it up on Sleeper. We can look at like your Tank Adele's, and go, well, how sustainable is 10 targets in that offense? Well, there's extra pass attempts in order to get Tank Adele going as a wide receiver 3. So now knowing that, like, I'm going to have Keenan Allen's and Mike Williams missing time because of the bye, I can already plan ahead and say, well, this is a sustainable guy that I can look at plugging in there. So maybe if he's still available in my league this week, I can plan ahead 2 weeks to have him in my lineup as a post or as a buy guy. And I don't think necessarily Tank Dell has enough upside because of how he's used in the offense. Same thing with like when we talk about Reed for the Packers, because I think I was looking at it before I went live, and Jordan Love has less completions, or Jordan Love has less attempts than whereas Kirk Cousins has completions at this point in the season. So like you're almost getting to the point with the Packers offense and the Falcons offense where there aren't even enough pass attempts to sustain one guy. Maybe Bijan, if Bijan's the number 1 in that offense, but that he's getting that the passing work supplement to his rushing work. So like I'm looking ahead at these things and I'm going like, okay, who's my wide receiver 3? Am I going to plug him in? Am I a 3 running back comp? Am I a 3 wide receiver comp? Again, this is going to change based off of your league settings. So like if you're a 3 wide receiver league, or you have like those 2 flexes and all that happy stuff, but like the value of the players on my bench is how close are they going to be to actually getting into my lineup versus like how little, if I'm carrying this weird, wide receiver 4 and I'm like, I'm never going to use him. Like KJ Osborne for the Vikings, like he has value because of the passing volume that's there, but he's probably the de facto number 3. And it's just like, well, when am I ever going to carry a guy like that? Like, and again, like a Reed, and I always screw his name up. I want to say Jaden, but it's not Jaden. It is Jaden. Jaden Reed for the Packers. Like, there's just not enough passing volume there week in and week out for him to sustain 8 targets. And he's kind of being used in this gimmicky role. So like when would I ever put in a guy in like that? Well, here's the thing. I would use a guy like that as a 1-week rental for buys. I'm just not going to hold them on my roster when I can stash guys with more potential energy for the future. So anyway, I think that's about all. I do have a couple things like, oh yeah, JSN in Seattle. There's a little bit of the possibility. I can find him, Jackson Smith. It's hard to tell with that offense if they're going to be a higher passing volume offense. They were last year. This year it's kind of been wonky between like a comeback victory and an absolute like mud hole stomping. So like a guy like this, like he's probably going to have spike weeks, and he has value for me as a replacement player in bye weeks, because like I can shoot for that upside, throwing him in there, as opposed to like a safer floor guy that I might not be able to get that with. And then as I have, the reasons why rookies, especially rookie wide receivers, have something to stash a little bit is because like we don't know what we don't know what they are, as opposed to veterans. At this point, the veterans would have to do something like substantial to go like, well, we don't already know this about you. It's like an old dog learning new tricks, right? As opposed to rookies, like we just don't know what they are yet at this point in the season. So anyway, to finish with, because I think somebody said something about like doing recaps, like if you have contributors in your lineup from like the Browns, the Chargers, Seahawks, the Buccaneers, and even a little bit from the Packers and the Steelers who have week 6 buys, like I would be planning ahead to start filling those holes in, because that if you don't plan, a week or two ahead, your opponents could have the possibility of snatching these guys up that you need to fill those holes. And then the other thing is the Burrow rumors of him not playing on Monday night, and potentially Austin Eckler missing until week 6. Those are the big news overall, to look at. And, if I'm going to roll the dice on Joe Burrow, the only 2 other options I have on Monday night are Matt Stafford and Jake Browning, it looks like, at this point. So anyway, I think that's about it. I want to keep it short, but like and sweet, and just get out of here.